Imagine that moment you are used to seeing in space documentaries or sci-fi movies. A spaceship approaches an unknown planet, deploys its landing gear, and gently makes contact with a dusty, solid surface. For years, you learned in school textbooks that Jupiter is the most massive planet in the solar system. But if you put on a spacesuit and floated down toward Jupiter, could you find a solid piece of rock to walk on? When most people hear that Jupiter is a gas giant, they assume it is merely a misty cloud. Some even think that, if you had a strong enough ship, you could enter from one side and exit from the other. This is precisely where everyone is wrong. Today, I am going to tell you about a rather striking and unsettling truth. Jupiter is not just a cotton candy-like cloud of gas. And trying to land there is not floating down like a feather, but voluntarily jumping into the universe's most ruthless meat grinder. To understand the situation more clearly, let's make the scale of the universe tangible. Jupiter has such a massive bulk that you could easily fit 1,300 Earths inside it. If you try to loop around Jupiter's circumference in a standard passenger car driving non-stop at 100 kilometers per hour, that journey would take well over 60 years. The professor spins the basketball in his hand on his finger and smiles directly at the camera. This enormous size creates a colossal gravitational force at its center. That is why landing on Jupiter is technically impossible, because there is no ground to step on. But if there is no solid ground to step on, what exactly would happen to you if you started falling into those fascinating, colorful clouds in a spaceship? At what point, and how, would you be destroyed? The professor leans in close to the screen, raises his finger, and lowers his voice. The moment you enter the atmosphere, the immense pressure bearing down on you reaches hundreds of times that of the deepest ocean trench on Earth. Long before your spaceship strikes a solid rock, it would be crushed and crumpled like a tin can purely by the weight of the air. The professor pauses for a moment, making a gesture with his hand as if squeezing the small metal model on his desk. So what lies even further down? What does what we call gas turn into under that terrifying pressure? The professor smiles mysteriously. Now we're coming to the layer that will blow your mind. Right at this point, as you descend into the depths of those colorful clouds, the gases compress, heat up, and the laws of physics as we know them begin to push their boundaries. When you go down about 1,000 kilometers, gaseous hydrogen becomes so dense that it turns into a liquid ocean. But this is no sea of water like you know. Imagine it like this, a boiling sea thousands of times denser than mercury, the hottest and heaviest liquid on Earth. The pressure is so high that atoms begin to lose their electrons, and hydrogen takes on a liquid metallic state that conducts electricity. In other words, while searching for a ground to step on, you would find yourself in the middle of a massive ocean of liquid metal, thousands of degrees hot. The professor leans in toward the screen, opens his eyes wide, and slaps his hand on the desk. So why do we call this planet a gas giant then? When most people see the word gas, they picture something volatile like cooking gas in a kitchen. That is precisely where the misconception begins. If the pressure is high enough, a gas can be heavier than mercury and more crushing than steel. Jupiter is a gas giant, not because it lacks a solid crust, but because it turns its own atmosphere into liquid metal through the pressure created by its enormous mass. The professor takes a small sponge from his desk and squeezes it in his palm until it becomes tiny, metaphorically speaking. The school textbooks simplifying Jupiter to us as a balloon made of gas created this perception. Hollywood, on the other hand, has always promised us new planets where we could set foot. Yet nature can build brutal and magical structures far beyond our imagination. At the end of the day, Jupiter, that giant protective shield of the solar system, is a giant so magnificent that had it collapsed in on itself, it might even have become a second sun. You cannot land and walk there. But merely watching its crushing grandeur is enough to remind us how small humanity truly is. Remember the landing gear of that spaceship you dreamed of at the beginning of the video. Now you know that there is no harbor to land on in Jupiter. There is only a tremendous force that will melt you down to your atoms. The professor smiles, sets the basketball aside, and waves at the camera. If you love getting lost in the mysterious world of massive planets, you can subscribe to the channel and take your place in this space adventure.